welcome to the policy planning meeting. Just push that button. Benita, can you hear us all right? And thank you very much for beaming in. So Benita ordinarily chairs this committee, but she's overseas at the moment. So has asked me to step in on her behalf, which I'm very pleased to do. Thank you very much. In terms of covering off health and safety, just emergency procedures. In the event of emergencies, please exit through the emergency door in the committee room by the kitchen. And if required assistance to exit, please see a staff member. And once you reach the bottom of the stairs, make your way to the assembly point at 43 Floaton Road. Staff will guide you to an alternate route if necessary, and in case of an earthquake, if there is one, please drop cover and hold where possible and remain where you are until further instruction is given. Just ensure that your microphones are on and cell phones to silent. That'd be fantastic. So just looking at our agenda, a number of reports here. There will be staff presenting the following items, starting at tab 4, the freshwater implementation update on page 4, and I believe Anne is going to present on that. Thank you, Anne.
Staff will also introduce themselves before they do their presentation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anne, here we go.
Kia ora. Thank you. Kia ora. So, quick update on the land and freshwater policy planning situation. I assume that you will have read the paper, and I draw your attention to attachment B, which is the long history of the development of the land and freshwater plan, which underlines our commitment to getting a new plan and the importance of getting a new plan. So we thought it was important to provide you with a copy of that. In August, the RMA Amendment Act came through, which stopped us work on the plan. We were intending to complete by March 2026. Since that plan stop, we've continued to work on freshwater topics, and basically to a point where we are happy that we have progressed them as far as we can, and we can park them until we can reformat them and repackage them to meet the requirements of whatever legislation arrives next week. Attachment A shows you that when we have reviewed the program, there are some things that we have put on hold, but mostly we have kept going. The key area of activity has changed, I guess. We have the main things that we still need to do are discussions with iwi and hapu around the work the science that we have been learning about, and the issues and the options in front of us. But we have been talking to the Y Steering Group about the challenges that we have faced in continuing to do that work without the certainty of the legislative situation. So we're proceeding basically to keep going, because when we have the new legislation, we want to be as best prepared as we can to progress and have a plan that's fit for purpose for Taranaki for the future. So I guess that's really all I wanted to draw your attention to. If there's any questions.
Sure. Any questions? Donna?
Just through the chair, a clarification, because it'll be about agility, won't it? Because if the targets change. So is that something we're thinking about going forward?
Well, we have a plethora of science, and the target setting work is still being, it's in draft form, and we actually have some peer review which will be happening in the next little while of some of that work. We're not focusing on the detail so much as the approach at the moment, so that we're clear on the approach that we think is appropriate for Taranaki. Obviously, we need the detail. There are some things where we need the detail in order to actually come down to those sorts of detailed discussions with people, and that's actually the risk we face in some of our talking to community and stakeholders, is that we don't have the certainty of being able to say this is what the legislation says. These are the regulations. So, but we can talk about our approach and what's appropriate and how we can work together.
Thank you.
Emily?
Just a question around the 4 items that are on hold. Could you give a little bit of information about that? Why they're on hold?
Why they're on hold?
Yeah. Like, if these things would be good for us to know.
Well, they're ones where we think a range of reasons. The receiving water quality standards, we're waiting more information on the central government situation. Outstanding water bodies, we're not sure whether that will be something in the new legislation. Our next step would be to do quite a bit more work and invest quite a bit more money. So we want to have a bit more certainty before we do that. Wetlands, again, that's the same. We want a little bit more certainty because we need to invest a little bit more. And wastewater treatment plants, yeah, that's also about the national situation and wanting more certainty there before we have parked the work. We've done a lot of work on those things. It's not that there's nothing being done. We're just waiting for a little bit more information to come down.
You mentioned the Y steering group and that the response would come out next week. At what stage do you see an opportunity to then link back in with the Y steering group to provide more clarity?
Well, we, as I think you're aware, we had a meeting last week, and I imagine that we will be linking back in with you as soon as we have more information in terms of what the legislation tells us and how that affects when we've done a bit of a risk assessment in terms of what that means with how we move forward. We were thinking to maybe early in the new year come back together and say, well, how are we going? But there's still plenty of things to talk about, I guess, in the meantime. So we don't want to waste time. We want to keep going.
Through you, Chair, we may share submissions, for example, as we do with other groups in the community.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I can also comment. Look, having seen the draft legislation will be helpful for understanding where issues are going. MFE are also looking to engage with us on some issues already,
right,
which are relevant to the Y steering group, so we'll engage with them around those issues. And there obviously also national direction development is underway and due to be released in the first quarter of next year, as we understand it at the moment. So we're not far away from seeing the big pieces of the framework that will enable us to form a view on the way forward in many of these areas. Now, the devil will be in the detail of what those frameworks provide, but as I said, we are getting closer, and so it is important that we just keep things ticking over, albeit at a slower pace, so that, because of what we also understand, we're going to have very limited time frames to implement this stuff, like 2.5 years. So we're going to have to move at considerable pace, and a rates-capped environment, probably. So we're going to have to move at considerable pace and reprioritise how we advance this sort of development work at speed, which is why we need to be careful about how we move quickly and expediently.
So looking at Appendix B, there's a lot of stop-go in the development of planning, waiting for government, and then they bring through directions which then require haste as well.
Yeah. And you know, there's the thing that needs to be remembered too, of course, is we have to await the direction of the government today, and this Appendix B makes it very clear the direction has changed a number of times halfway through the process. And that has led to the point which we now have a 24, 25-year plan that has some challenges associated with it in terms of meeting requirements of Taranaki today. So we just need to keep the process going so that we can move at speed once we have some certainty.
Sure.
Albeit, we've got an election again next year, so who knows?
Yes.
Just through you, Chair, just a question for Steve. So the real challenge for you is, are you looking at reshifting resources? Because all of a sudden you're going to need a huge amount of resources under a capping regime, which is bloody difficult.
So it will have to be a prioritisation approach and what do we stop and what do we
Internally,
start.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the stuff we're going to have to work our way through is what do we stop and turn off.
Yep.
Absolutely critical issue that we'll be asking the councils to make some decisions on.
Right. Okay.
Fine.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, we'll look for a move and a second to receive the memorandum titled Land and Freshwater Policy and Planning Update. Thank you. Right. Seconder? Thank you, Mitch. Thanks very much, Anne. Let's come to item number 5, Land, Air, Water, Aotearoa, Annual Refresh 2025. Thomas, thank you.
The red light and speakers on?
Yeah, push it so it's green.
Green.
Yeah,
Perfect.
thanks very much.
Marie, did we have those slides waiting in the wings?
Yeah.
Perfect.
And have you got the...
Yep. Hang up there. Tēnā koutou ko Thomas McElroy, Toku Ingoa. Before I start on the agenda item, I just wanted to introduce myself and the Science and Technology team. For those who don't know me, my name is Thomas McElroy and I joined TRC just over 10 years ago as a technical officer, where I spent most of my time out in the field collecting samples and carrying out surveys. So gathering the sorts of data that I'll be talking about today. Science and Technology, or S&T, essentially comprises one half of the Environment Quality Department, which is led by Abby. S&T is made up of 3 teams of talented scientists and environmental data specialists. Our work contributes to TRC's State Environment Program, flood and severe weather monitoring and consent monitoring, as well as providing technical advice for policy development and consent applications. I'm looking forward to working with you all, so please reach out if there's anything else you'd like to learn more about. Now on to the agenda item. So I'll take the paper as read, but I'll still provide a few key highlights and also show some of the web pages to give a better understanding of what LAWA is and how it works. LAWA, or Land, Air, Water, Aotearoa, is an online national platform providing open access to environmental data from all regional councils and key agencies across the country. The latest refresh was completed in September, updating data for 3,500 sites and introducing 20-year trend analyses for 1,200 sites, which is a major milestone for long-term environmental monitoring. So this slide here gives an indication of the scale of monitoring coverage across New Zealand. Shows a subset of monitoring sites where we collect data on macroinvertebrates, which are aquatic insects that are established indicators of river water quality. So each of those coloured dots on the map there represents a monitoring site. The annual refresh reflects a significant collective effort involving numerous staff from each regional council, including field officers, scientists, data, IT and GIS specialists and communications advisors. Key findings from the latest National Picture Assessment show impacts on ecological health at around 2/3 of all monitored sites, as well as issues such as nutrient pollution and fecal bacteria contamination. On a positive note, improvements in ammonia and phosphorus levels have also been observed, which may be linked to better wastewater management and a reduction in point source discharges, including farm dairy effluent. These national findings generally reflect what we're seeing in the Taranaki monitoring data, However, our own state environment reporting offers a more detailed regional assessment of these topics, and we have a number of monitoring reports scheduled for 2026. So just before I wrap up, I just wanted to show a couple more web pages from LAWA to highlight how the site can be used. The paper talks about exploring data within catchments or sites of interest. So here I've selected the river water quality topic and zoomed in on the Patia River catchment. So we can see all of the river monitoring sites on the right there and the type of data that is available for each site. I've now clicked on the Patia River at Barclay Road, which is a monitoring site in the upper catchment, not far from the National Park. Specifically, we're looking at water quality results for total nitrogen. These data are summarised in terms of current state, long-term trends, and the full sample history is also presented in the bottom. The paper also talks about LAWA effectively illustrating the bigger picture. So each year these national picture summary reports are produced as part of the annual refresh. On the screen in front of you there are some snippets from the latest report, including the proportion of sites and different grades relating to ecosystem health. And lastly, there are a bunch of really useful resources and fact sheets if you're wanting to know more about any of the topics presented on LAWA. There are links to some of the key web pages in the paper in front of you in case you wanted to explore this for yourself. Thanks for listening, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Thomas. Any questions? Yes.
To you, Chair. Just noticed one comment that you made with the information that goes to LAWA. You're saying that you've got more detailed data over and above what's in there. Is that data that's going to be shared to the actual national platform, or is that you have certain parameters that you've just got to stick by the certain amount?
There's probably two parts to that. So we do test and carry out surveys for a wider sort of range of indicators than what's presented on LAWA. They've sort of had to prioritise, I guess, some of the more commonly adopted indicators to present, and they do have a program of trying to expand what they're showing on LAWA. So we do test for more things than what goes on the website, but also when we talk about providing a more detailed assessment of a state environment, that probably also speaks to the depth and breadth of analyses and interpretation, at a regional level that accompanies that data.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, Neil.
Following up, Mr. Chair, following up your comments there, obviously in different areas there are mixtures of different things. I mean, as far as say measuring nitrates in rivers in Taranaki, you get one set of LAWA figures, but if you look at MCA, the animals and so forth, you get a totally different. How do they reconcile the fact that you've got different, we had a situation in the past where there was a lot of condemnation about a particular river, but it actually was a LAWA river the year as well at the same time?
Right, yeah. So I guess that's where that detailed analysis of the data comes in, which is probably another sort of step beyond what LAWA's presenting at the moment. So trying to understand the relationship between all of these different things that we're measuring, and there is a lot of nuance in those relationships and linking back to different physical catchment characteristics and things like that. So. And
just one more point, as well as that, Mr. Chair, as well as that, the actual fact that Taranaki's such fast-flowing rivers present a different story just based on some of these statistical analysis.
Yeah, no, we've got a unique geographic setting, the Maunga there in the middle of the region for sure, and those are all the sorts of things that we need to try and account for when we're assessing the data.
Question from Benita.
Really interesting report, Kilda. Is PFAS an issue for Taranaki, and if so, are we testing for it?
Abby, is that one that you might want to take?
Good question. We did do an investigation into PFAS at the time, and I should explain, PFAS is a contaminant that's come from things like firefighting foams.
So what?
Firefighting foams.
The forever chemical doesn't doesn't
So it
disintegrate.
doesn't break down easily, and it persists in the environment for a long period of time. When that became quite topical in New Zealand, probably about 7 or 8 years ago, Taranaki did do an investigation into PFAS contamination. We don't generally regularly monitor it because it's difficult to monitor and it's very, very expensive. We would tend to go and look at those sorts of contaminants on an investigation basis rather than having them incorporated into our general monitoring programs. So yeah, we generally target and tailor those sorts of investigations rather than just having them part of SOA. That would be a significant investment for the council should we do that.
Sure. So can I just have a follow-up question to that then? What would trigger an investigation? How would someone know that an investigation might be needed for PFAS?
Generally, it would be based on risk. So we know that those sorts of activities might have occurred in the past. PFAS can come from a range of different things. It's used in, silicon cookware and not silicon, sorry, but yeah, non-stick cookware, and it's used in all sorts of things and reasonably prevalent. The reason it was in such high contamination rates was because it was in the firefighting foams before they were discontinued in New Zealand, and because they were being tested and used in quite high concentrations and concentrated areas, they tended to build up quite a lot of contamination in certain places, hence the investigations that went on at the time, mostly in relating to fighting areas and stations and also the Defence Force as well. So there's possibility that there are other areas where they do persist, but yeah, on a as needed basis, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next question from you.
Kia ora, Thomas. You've got a note in your paper about Mātauranga Māori not being incorporated into it, but there's an ongoing program of work around the new indicators. Do you have any more information around what those new indicators are?
Not off the top of my head. I know that's conversations happening at a national level. There is a regional council collective body who are kind of steering the direction of LAWA, and I'm not too sure what the next cab off the rank is in terms of additional indicators on that. But I can go away and find it out.
Be appreciated, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Emily, yes.
Just a quick one. Just trying to understand the data sharing. So every 2 years, this comes out as a multi-year trends, and then it's reported about a year and a bit later. Is that how it works?
So it's updated annually, but it's only updated so if it happens in September, it's the previous June that the data becomes current to. So we're at the 2025 refresh, so therefore the data on the website data set was updated to June 2024, and that's just accounting for, there being a need for data checking and QC processes that can't necessarily happen straight away.
So every year it will come out?
Every year, yep, that's right.
Good. Thanks very much. Well, the recommendation is to receive the memorandum of Land, Air, Water, Aotearoa Annual Refresh 2025, and also to note additional state of the environment reporting and communication activities planned for the next 12 months. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Neil. And Donna, you'll second that. Thank you very much. All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Let's go to item 6, nature-based solutions to flooding in Taranaki. Chris, thank you for speaking to this.
Morena. My name's Chris Vickers. I'm the Rivers Manager here at Taranaki Regional Council. Just a bit about myself and the team that I lead. We're a small team. There's only 2 of us in our team, and our primary role is to look after our flood protection schemes around the region. But we also have technical advisory roles across council, so we'll support consent applications, investigation works by the compliance teams and land management. And then also have an outwards facing role where we work alongside landowners, stakeholders, to identify and help address erosion and flood control issues on private land as well. Yeah, so this, I will take the paper as read, but this is essentially a bit of a background and summary for our nature-based solutions project, which kicked off in 2023. So as we move through this, hopefully you can learn about what we did. So as it says there, back after Cyclones Gabrielle and the Auckland anniversary flood events, MFE made available to regional councils across the country $5 million to go away and do some hydrodynamic modelling looking into the suitability or the feasibility of nature-based solutions to improve flood protection for our communities where the high costs and limited potential future use of grey infrastructure may be required. Funding, like I said, had a really strong focus on the modelling component. It wasn't to be used for works on the ground. However, it could be used to fund, to pay for consultation and planning with our communities. And as it says at the bottom, primarily for MBS or nature-based solutions, but it could also tie in stop banks and flood walls where they may be applicable. So TRC submitted 2 projects. One of them we developed in partnership with Te Kahui Otaru, and that was based on the Waitota catchment, and it really was quite a holistic plan to go away, do the flood modelling, and then bring in the sort of community tied in, like the technical flood modelling with the community viewpoint and the tales and the stories of flood events down there, and then a more broad regional project. And then the objectives of both of these were to strengthen relationships with mana whenua, community and stakeholders, and then obviously develop those flood modelling tools and understanding of the feasibility of nature-based solutions in Taranaki, and then reporting on those. And just heads up on the nature-based solutions for flooding. So typically the works that we do to protect communities from flooding are done at the bottom end of the catchment. They are flood walls, stop banks and rock work in and around the towns at river mouths. But MBS looks at a more holistic approach to the catchment wide. So looking at things like wetlands, afforestation, or dams and bunds, and they're really trying to slow the flow of that water through the catchment. And there's obviously broader ecological benefits as well, ecological, environmental and social benefits through using those methodologies. And hydrodynamic models, so this is something that we've sort of had to learn about as well as we go. But so the modelling that we're talking about, it takes those key items on the left-hand side of your screen there. So it takes our existing LiDAR data, which gives us a sort of the idea of the slope of the landscape. It takes bathymetries, which is the channel, or what the river looks like under the water. It takes out rainfall data, soils data, land cover, structures. So we build in things like culverts and bridges, and then building footprints to see how water's going to interact with those building footprints. So all those layers are combined into like a digital software, a modelling software. And then the digital rain has digital gravity applied to it, and then it's poured essentially on a digital landscape. A lot of 1 metre by 1 metre cells. And then the program does the maths to go through and work out where the water's going to go, how deep it's going to be, and how fast it's going to flow. And then so when they work through the scenarios, if they want to modify a rainfall event, or if they want to modify a climate change event, they'll play with things like the rainfall volumes or rainfall amounts. And if they want to test interventions, they'll change things like land cover, or they'll actually modify the DEM or the landscape surface to say, hey, there is a structure here that's now impounding the water. And then so on the right-hand side of there are the sort of outputs you can expect to develop from those. The top right there is your sort of water elevation or flood extent, and then bottom right is the velocities. So your higher velocities are in the red there, under the bridges and around corners. The testing scenarios. So on initially awarding the contract to our consultants, they came and visited Taranaki, and we did a good drive around and had a look up the Waitota catchment. And they pretty early on identified that nature-based solutions aren't going to have significant effect on those large events, the greater, like the 1 in 50 year events or the 100-year events. So the focus for the testing was really around those smaller, more frequent events, with the 5% AEP. And just for reference, the 2015 event that happened in Waitota and around the region, which you can see the effects there on the right-hand side, that was determined to be a 1 in 50 year event. Other scenarios were tested and modelled. However, like I said, the MBS, the nature-based solution stuff, wasn't tested against those. And the effects looked at flood risk only. So you could pull together a whole suite of benefits. You could look at water quality, habitat, all that sort of stuff, but we only looked at the effects on flood risk for this project. So just a bit of a deep dive into the Waitota model. So the model that we developed down there was really highly detailed. It used TRC rainfall and hydrology information that our environmental data team has collected over the last few decades. It was then calibrated to the 2015 and 2018 flood events. And the top two pictures up there, you can see Takido Marae. On the right-hand side is a photo from shortly after the flood event, and then on the left-hand side is what the model predicted that event to look like. So a pretty close match to where those timelines are, and that silt has been deposited. These were then validated through conversations with the community. We had 2 meetings down in Waitota in April this year, and we had a fairly good turnout considering the small population down there and a really busy time of year. We had good turnout, really good conversations with them, and 3 key locations of interest were considered for the project, and the feasibility or the benefits derived from the nature-based solutions were determined by changes in flood level and response times at those key locations. We'll just quickly go through the scenarios that we looked at. So scenario 1 was afforestation of the privately owned land, greater than 35 degrees, that's currently in pasture. And the reason that we wanted to look at this is because this is work that our land management team under their Hill Country Erosion Program is currently doing. You know, that's a best management sort of soil conservation practices to retire or afforest that land class. And you can see the results of, you know, what would be a significant investment was a fairly minimal benefit in regards to flood protection at the bottom end of the catchment. Scenario 2, so we looked at a leaky weir at the confluence of the Momahaki stream and the Waitota River. And these are quite popular in North America, where they are sort of used to simulate beaver dams. And in New Zealand, they might be used to simulate wetlands or log jams on smaller streams, where you're capturing or you're impounding that water and releasing it more slowly through the catchment. So not all the water's getting to, say, Waitota Township all at once. And the benefit of, you know, essentially no impact based on what they've done there. Essentially damming the Momahaki stream at the river mouth had no effect because the effect of the Waitota River was just too strong. Targeted riparian buffer. So this is an attempt to see what the riparian afforestation along this reach of river would do. And you can see it covers quite a lot of fairly fertile, highly productive land, with only minor increases downstream. So again, a huge commitment from landowners and funding avenues if we were to go down this route for a fairly small gain downstream. Scenario 4, so then let's look at catchment scale riparian buffer. Top right hand side you can see the extent of that riparian planting, so that would be, you know, all the major waterways in the catchment 10 metres wide. And again you can see the downstream effects of that, so Waitota Township, a small decrease in the flood levels downstream, but actually mid-catchment at Takido Marae, a increase in flood levels as that water's impounded and spills onto the floodplain. But a fairly large increase in the response time that people that are living in Waitota would have. The key outputs for the Waitota project were the model. So TRC now holds the model file. So if we wanted to keep working on this project, we wouldn't have to use the same consultant if we want, or we can provide it to our territorial authorities or anyone else that wants it as well. So Taranaki actually has a really detailed flood model for Waitota catchment that can be used for anything going forward. We've got a whole variety of output maps, and then also two main reports, but there's a few other ones around calibration and setup as well. And then, so that sort of wraps up the Waitota project. And then the regional one, which we actually ended up focusing on the Waitota catchment. So 2 reasons for this. One was time restraints. The timeline started slipping a bit. And then also the Waitota was the other main catchment that had real potential to achieve change using nature-based solutions, and also has that highly developed floodplain in Waitota Township. Again, same smaller flood events or more frequent flood events were tested with a limited calibration, so it's definitely not as detailed as the Waitota model. And the efficacy or the positive effects are determined by the reduction in flood protection, flood levels behind the stop banks. Because we have flood protection assets in Waitota, it's actually the impounding of localised stormwater behind those stop banks during these smaller events that causes damage to homes. So, you know, nature-based solutions would look at lowering the river level in town and then allowing those waters impounded behind the stop banks to be a little bit lower, water discharged to the river sooner. And again, 3 scenarios tested under that. Afforestation of that steep land again, a minor reduction in Waitara Township, no impact on response times. Scenario 2, again, significant catchment scale riparian buffer. You can see the purple lines there up on the map. So you imagine 10 metres wide either side of the river, all the way through that catchment. And then the downstream effects are, you know, 11 to 250 mils reduction in flood levels and a 30-minute increase in warning times available to that community. Scenario 3, so we looked at the removal of the flood protection assets in Waitara just to understand what would get wet if we remove them. It's modelling that we haven't done in Waitara to date. And you can see there's an image at the top there of our stop bank upstream of the township. And then so removal of those increased flooding in the township between 250 and 2.4 metres. No impact on the response time. However, with those deep waters flowing through the town, there's a huge risk. And this really goes to show just the positive effect that our flood protection scheme is having, even on a small event. Our relatively, you know, our scheme is designed for the 1% AEP or the 1% event, and this is testing the 20%, so, or 5%, sorry. So it's doing a great job. So key findings, Waitara, so the modelling suggests that flood benefits associated with nature-based solutions probably would not justify the investments required to have measurable benefits. And based on the conversations that we had with the community down in Waitara, the flood protection that they aspire to won't be met by nature-based solutions. Waitara, same thing, you know, the significant investment required to try and achieve flood protection using flood protection improvements using nature-based solutions probably not offset by the cost. While we didn't have conversations with the community down there. But there's, in italics on the bottom there, so nature-based solutions should still be explored for the multitude of other benefits they provide. However, flood benefits will likely remain a minor factor.
Very interesting.
Cool. There's a couple more slides, sorry. So the other outputs, so like I said, we've got the model file as a really cool regional resource now that we can use and share as required. We've got a range of regional flood layers as a part of that. You can see all the different catchments there that we've modelled. So we've done the whole region, and we have the 5% AEP, 1% AEP, or the 1 in 100 year flood event. The 1% AEP with RCP 8.5, so worst case scenario climate change out to year 2090, to see what that looks like as well. And then the 1 in 250 year flood event, so things that overtop all the design standards in our flood protection schemes. What does that look like as well? And then you can see the range of layers there that are available. And then yeah, you can see on the right-hand side of the screen there, what those outputs look like. So summary, so over this project we've really worked towards and achieved strengthening relationships with mana whenua, the community and our key stakeholders in those catchments. We've reported on the feasibility of nature-based solutions for Waitara and Waitara. We understand what those look like now for the scenarios that we've tested. And we've developed a wide range of regional flood models. So this is the best data at a regional scale today, and which has complete coverage of the region. And then, like I said earlier, it's going to be available for future projects, and there's a real broad application of those. There's flood risk layers in there that CDM or TIMO will be able to use to understand what the flood risks are in certain parts of the region. Compliance will be able to use it to understand where foresters cannot leave slash on the floodplain, all these sorts of things, and what does climate change look like for Taranaki. Next steps. So our next steps for us are to define the limitations. We've got an independent peer reviewer just helping us understand what that looks like. We're going to then agree on the suitability for use. You know, what can we advise the community that this flooding information is suitable for using for? Develop some easily digestible documentation that explains what we've done, how we've done it, and what it means. And then also we've got to work through some data conflicts as well. New Plymouth District Council is doing some really, really highly detailed modelling now. So what we need to do is make sure that our less detailed modelling in the same area gets clipped out. So when a community or someone goes and looks at that data, they see the best data and there's a single source of the truth. We're not getting conflicts or confusion developing. So we'll work through that. And then we really want to be able to share this information. We want to make it so that it's easily accessible. So the plans are to put it on the TRC website, have it really be able to tell the story and share the findings. And then share this information as well with the Natural Hazards Database. And then as a wider TRC unit, sort of support future use and further development. If anyone else wants to develop it or use it, we should be part of that conversation and help them do that and, you know, benefit from it as well. Yeah, and just a list of acknowledgements there, really obviously thankful for MFE for the funding opportunity, our Te Kahu Raudu staff for their time and guidance with developing and like moving through the whole project, the various marae and hapu representatives that we work through, the community, the TAs, and the consultants that we work with as well.
Very good. Well, yeah, very interesting and worthwhile information. Benita, you have your hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, please. Well, I've got a question and just a bit of a statement, really. And in terms of the terminology, I'm starting to become more and more concerned about using the 1 in 50 year event, the 1 in 250 year event, because it could happen next winter and every winter after. We just don't know. And is the public being desensitised to the risks when they hear terms like 1 in 50 year event? Oh, we just had that in 2015, so it's not going to happen again for another 45 years. That's my concern around messaging. What are we doing around that? And the other thing in point 26, you talk about plans to continue to develop it with further input from the community and local stakeholders in the near future. Have you got a time frame for rolling this out with the community, with iwi, with hapu, with stakeholders, etc.?
Yeah, great points and questions. So on the first one, yeah, communication of the flood risk and people's awareness and even understanding of the protection levels provided by flood protection assets is a huge thing that the sector is working through at the moment. So at the moment we're having conversations around ensuring that the terminology is the same across the country. That people are staying in tune with, even they might have a stop bank right behind their house, but understanding where and how those fail, and they may actually fail below design, or if an event escalates and it becomes an over-design event, then the risk still exists. So in Taranaki, we've been working on a communication strategy to go out, start developing leaflets, developing videos to really try and communicate that risk and ensure that the terminology that we use is clear and people do understand the risk that exists despite us having flood protection assets in place. So it was due to kick off this in November, that program of work, but it's been pushed out to December just for current workload. So that's definitely happening.
Yeah, very good.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, very good question, and I think NIWA are looking at those calibrations as well. Neil.
Mr. Chair, a couple of observations. First, people, I own 2 properties in that catchment, and there's been apparently 6 major floods since 1860, and I mean major floods. Some unkind people suggest I remember most of them, but the situation there is that the floods reach levels up to over 50 metres above the current river basin, and they actually change the nature of the stream altogether, taking land which apparently is next to it in floodplains and moving it completely around in a very dramatic way. And you find trees higher than this building with marks on them that show where the water has got to. Now, one of the big issues there's 2 issues just to mention. One is that the actual river bridge is actually at the level of the sea. So the result is, if the tide is in, you get a double effect of the river being held up, so it can't escape because the tide is keeping it in. So I don't know whether that was quite showed clear in this particular thing. The other thing that's interesting is I've got a forest which is being cut down at the present time, and I will be planting it in native forestry afterwards, rather manuka, and then over time it will obviously revert completely to native forest. One of the problems you've got, of course, is that, and I won't be able to claim and don't tend to claim under the stress program, because if the land is pre-1990 forest, then that is not allowable under stress. So I just wondered whether any study had actually been done to assess what land in the Waitotra is in fact pre-1990 and therefore not eligible for any encouragement.
Yes. I guess the land management, Don Chairman would be the best one to talk to, or Dan, around the assessment of pre-89 land use. I don't know if that was
through you, Chair. There might be some information available from Don's land management team, so obviously well outside of the scope of Chris's ambit, but we could get that information if necessary.
Mr. Chair, I'm really saying is that these programs to actually afforestate the area, you can do a lot of work on them, but you better check to see whether there's an eligibility for doing it before you actually get to that point. And maybe tell it if there's are to be programs to make or encourage people to do this, then it may have to be tailored in view of the current situation with the law.
Okay, we'll take that question under consideration. Thank you, Donna.
I was just wondering, will that information be used in the spatial plan number? So it is.
Yes, definitely. It's incredibly handy.
Yeah, it is, I'm sure.
Can I answer Benita's second question? Did she have two parts to the question? Sorry.
Yes, she did.
Sorry, Benita. And on the time frame for sharing this information, Dan and I are attending a wānanga down in Waitotara on Friday to share an update with the project team. A lot of the Hub and I representatives will be there for that. So beyond that point, I think we can start having a conversation around more widely sharing it. But we just really want to keep the project team up to date first and give them their sort of summary as well.
Papai, thank you.
Can we go to Dion?
Yeah, sure, just explore. You mentioned that the costs wouldn't justify the small benefits of solutions. Could you give us an idea what the most costly thing is about?
Yeah, I guess I was looking at the afforestation one, and in Waitotara, the cost of just, if we're looking at pine trees at $1,100 a hectare for 5,000 hectares, you're in the vicinity of $5 million, and that wouldn't include any sort of maintenance. That doesn't include acquiring the land if landowners don't want to do it. And then again, that's using pine trees, which we probably don't even want to see on that class of land. So you'd be looking at $2,500 to $3,000 a hectare for native to plant. So massive investments. And then, yeah, I guess we haven't really quantified what the downstream values would be and how we would put a value on that. But there are tools to do it.
And just quickly, you mentioned that there might be other benefits of nature-based solutions. Do you have any idea around what those might potentially be?
Yeah, for sure. So water quality, we've got a riparian program, which it's, we're looking at already doing the riparian planting, and we know there's significant benefits for water quality, ecological values as well. A lot of soil conservation. Those riverbanks and Waitotara, as Neil alluded to, very quite loosely consolidated. So during big flood events, you will see massive amounts of slumping and all that silt gets remobilised. So that riparian planting or afforestation will go a long way to sort of holding or binding that together and improving water quality and soil conservation values.
And through you, Chair, I guess it's worth emphasising that the suggesting that the costs don't justify the benefit is purely from a flood perspective. So we're certainly not saying that the cost of doing that work doesn't justify the benefit that comes from water quality and biodiversity, not to mention carbon sequestration, which would hopefully help to slow climate change down in itself as well.
It's not eligible.
Okay, just two more questions, and if we can keep them reasonably brief, because we've got other items to go through. Emily, thank you.
I've kind of got three questions, so I might do them one by one. Just a really good report, really useful. Just looking at future modelling, I'm a little bit unclear whether it was covered this time or not, but just some suggestions, if it wasn't, is looking at different forest types, so native, non-native, looking at wetlands and topographical planting as opposed to just that 10 metre or 35 degree. looking at debris points, where bridges and things might block and cause flooding, tidal, as Neil mentioned. So the difference between the low tide, high tide. And then the last one just around culverts, drains, daylighting streams, rainwater tank harvesting, and the impacts on that, the modelling.
Yeah. So yeah, the scenarios that we looked at, so the first one that we specified was the afforestation one. My background's with the hill country land management, so I knew that work's already been done, so I wanted to understand, or be able to way to understand what the benefits were downstream. There's a lot more things we could go through and test, and we've had it raised before that what about testing, essentially wetland creation in other parts of the catchment, what benefits have they had? So that could be done. Our model has identified that that would be a good location just to see what the effect of impounding water in that whole stream would do on the township. So I guess you could shift it further up the catchment, and it may have different changes, but it would just be more investment in time. Future modelling, the tools will be fantastic for understanding culverts, bridges, not blockages as such, but how often they go underwater, at what size events they go underwater, and the duration they're underwater for. And that can be a really good tool for us informing how long communities need to be able to look after themselves, because they know that for this large event, that culvert's going to be drowned out for X amount of time.
Just another question, Mr. Chair. Did they look at the work done by the South Taranaki District Council, which in fact looked at a whole program of moving the town and other things like that? Did you get all that information too?
I'm aware of it. Those documents were provided to the consultant who brought together the sort of technical and the community side of the model, the programs, but it wasn't really included in this program of work.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, Chris, and the report. And
Sorry, the last two questions.
Sorry, we are running out of time. We've got quite a bit of other.
I'll ask you about them.
Yeah, maybe offline. Thank you. So the recommendation is that the Taranaki Regional Council receives a memorandum of nature-based solutions to flooding in Taranaki. Secondly, notes the findings of the reports Waitotara catchment nature-based solutions to flooding, nature-based solutions to flooding in the Waitotara draft, and the Waitara catchment nature-based solutions to flooding as outlined in the memorandum, and also note the reports and model outputs will be made available to the public once review is completed. Can I have a move and second it? Thank you. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. We go to item number 7. Thank you. Fred, are you going to lead us on this?
Yeah, I assume you've read the memo.
Yes.
This is an SOP that we've had for a while. We've updated it in terms of updating the number of sites we have in the region. We've strengthened the relationship we have with the Rural Support Trust in terms of when we do have a drought, and also addressed feedback we've had from the community about better communication as events develop. We've never had a water shortage direction here. I've come very close to making one, but then it rains. So at a water shortage direction finding, Chair, is where you can restrict water use and discharges to streams. So happy to answer any questions.
Right. Emily, thank you.
Getting quickly. Yeah, my question is really around the initial stages of warning people, because I think it was suggested that when it gets to a critical period, there's 1 week of warning or something, but it'd be good to be using particularly cultural monitoring to show where we can see changes coming up. So like at the moment, our people were talking about how we can see lots of things are flowering like crazy. So we're pretty sure there's a drought coming. So just, is there a way to work in things like that into this system?
That was part through you, Chair. That was part of the increase in communication. We have, where people have consents and have cut-off flows on them, they get told, right, about impending water shortages. what was missing, perhaps in what we were doing, was stronger connections with tangata whenua around trends in the environment and connecting more there and potentially sharing some of those ideas. So that's what we were looking to do more.
Benita, thank you.
Kia ora, thanks Fred. I know I've mentioned this before, maybe once or twice, but I'd really like to see Council consider a sinking lid policy on water consents when they're surrendered, and a intensive review of current consents to see if people actually need as much as they're taking. I think it's going to be critical moving forward that we are in a position of strength rather than powerlessness when it gets when it gets worse, when it gets badder. Look at my good England. So yeah, just wondering if that's something that Council is seriously considering. It's something that I'm very passionate about, putting us in the conservation end of the spectrum for water in the future. Kia ora.
So through you, Chair, when applications come up for renewal, applicants need to demonstrate the need for the water sort, and in catchments where water allocation is quite tight, and for example on major takes for district councils, the resources allocated, any more water they want, they're going to have to get by using the water they currently have more efficiently. So we're driving water efficiency measures through that consent process, and you've already seen places like New Plymouth where the district there have seen this coming and have already put in place water metering and domestic water metering. So in some locations, and those of you in districts will know where they are, there ain't any more water. You've got to use the water you have more wisely and sustainably.
Sorry, Fred, that didn't actually answer my question around the sinking lid on consents. Do people actually give up consents or anything? Or I understand what's being done by councils, but what are we doing?
So through you, Chair, some do give up consents, right? But not many, because the consent is an important chattel for a property. So that's what we're doing.
Any further questions? Okay, so thank you, Fred. The recommendations on page 181 and 182, that the Regional Council receives a memorandum, water shortage event standard operating procedure, B, adopts the updated water shortage event standard operating procedure, C, determines that this decision be recognised as not significant in terms of section 76 of the Local Government Act 2002, and D, determines that it has complied with the decision-making provisions of the Local Government Act 2002 to the extent necessary in relation to this decision, and in accordance with section 79 of the Act, determines that it does not require further information, further assessment of options, or further analysis of costs and benefits or advantages and disadvantages prior to making a decision of this matter. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, John. And thank you, Neil. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks very much, Fred. Let's come to item number 8, coastal plan change. Plan stop exemption application request. It's on page 209. Thank you, Finbar. Sorry. Oh, sure. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Anne.
Kia ora. I just want to introduce Kieran Horton, who's the policy analyst who's working on this issue, and is here to assist and answer your questions. So this paper is seeking your approval to make an application for an exemption from the Plan Stop Act, which was passed in August. We had a plan change in process at the time, which centres around Policy 43 in the Coastal Plan. The issue is that it has broad and directive wording, which means it's likely that any activity which has disturbance and deposition in the Taranaki coastal marine area is likely to be declined, which is considered to be an unintended consequence. So the exemption pathway that we would be looking at is that we are trying to address an unintended consequence of a mistake in a plan. So we completed clause 3 consultation before plan stop. In actual fact, we're still talking about the exact wording. However, we need to seek an exemption now. It's about keeping our options open. Within 90, there's a 90-day window in relation to exemptions. And if we don't submit an application before the 31st of December, we have to start from scratch again. So the purpose of the paper is not to seek to notify, it's to seek permission to apply so that we can progress if we want to. The New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement is in the process of being amended, and that might actually fix our issue for us because it sits in the hierarchy above our plan. We need to wait and see what that delivers. And if we do proceed, there will be formal clause 4 consultation. So there'll be more consultation in regard to the exact wording option. So there's a whole lot of, there's some detail in the paper. It's a matter of the importance of words, and yeah, so if you have any questions, now's the time.
Thank you, Anne. Any questions? Dion?
During the consultation with Evie, did they have ample opportunity to engage on this particular change?
We have had we've had at least one hui since I've been here. I don't know if there have been other huis.
Can you tell me what period of time that was? Roughly a period of time?
Since when did it start?
We worked with them. We did a workshop in August.
Yeah, but since about July, since I've been here, there's been interactions on wording, and I guess we haven't yet managed to reach agreement on wording.
Just noting that this last recent period, that all EV have been very consumed by the fast track application that's taken up quite a fair bit of time. So this might not have been a priority at that time, but definitely they want to be engaged with further.
This is actually not something we're particularly rushing about. The only rush is to actually have the option to proceed with the plan change if we want to. The actual consultation process which might flow on from this does not need to be rushed.
So there would be a planned consultation process if you had the optionality there.
Yeah, it's just it's purely keeping an option open. It's not saying that we have to decide anything. If the application is made, we probably wouldn't even get a response from the Minister till February. We probably would want to wait and see what the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement comes back with. And so, yeah, there's no... And in the meantime, we will be proceeding to have continuing conversations about what the wording might be.
Just noting that there is definite opposition to the draft change as it stands now, and there's also strong opposition from some EV to the actual exemption applications.
Right.
Through you, Chair. I absolutely get what it's saying, and I actually support it. I guess my question is, if it goes ahead and it gets accepted, what's the time frame in behind that? So have you got a planned time frame? So that would be your consultation till it's written, and then obviously submitting it and picking.
We hadn't actually made a plan because we wanted to see what happened with the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement first.
Yeah,
and it is also, you know, relevant to see what happens.
So ultimately what I'm saying is that these truckloads of time, that the urgency is actually getting us to agree to actually for you to be making that next step.
Yeah,
Which
to get the exemption so that we can
Stay.
continue the plan change process.
Yep, absolutely. Cool.
Mitch, thank you.
Just want to echo what Dion was saying, actually, because while there are some iwi that have provided feedback, some of those views have potentially changed over time. In particular, the non-support for the exemption. But my question then, it's part of our submission for Ngāti Mutunga, was what is the rush? I'm hearing you saying that there is no rush. So what's the rush when there is the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement due out, which may fix things? And we also have the VTM matter that's still at hand.
Well, it's a matter of legal risk for TRC, because as long as it is worded the way it is, we can have consent applications for relatively minor activities which have to be declined. And that can happen any time, and that will continue up until we have a new version of the Coastal Policy Statement order. And it can happen any time from now. And as I understand it, there may even be a couple in the wings that might be affected. So, and you know, while yeah, and there are activities which are not necessarily destructive activities. It's a very directive wording. It's a must not. It's not a may consider. It's a must not. And the other important thing to note is that there is policy 15. So there is a high level of protection without policy 43.
I'll just give us an example of what they might be, those ones. They're on the ones.
So, for example,
Sorry.
port, we're concerned.
Mics, please, guys. Mics.
Yeah, thank you.
To clarify your question, are you asking what activities may be affected?
Yes, there might be a couple that could be affected in the near future. What might be, for example?
The port, we're concerned that they believe they've found a pathway. When we did the workshop, we raised activities ranging from even things like dune restoration, for example, which I think the room would consider usually pretty beneficial. But essentially the wording is deposition and disturbance. So anything that's a deposit or disturbs the seabed must not occur. And the alternative situation would be until the next plan is operative under the new RM system, which is potentially not until 2029.
It's quite a few years away.
Just to finish off.
Yes, Mitch, and then we'll come to Neil.
So again, I definitely understand that, but I don't still see the urgency when that policy statement is still due, and it may actually solve things. Probably the other one for me is that you have reserves in some key areas, and iwi within those areas didn't respond, so to be able to provide opportunity for them to provide feedback. So I'm thinking of the Tapawai Reserve, the Parinini Reserve. I don't see Ngāti Tama or Te Atiawa providing any feedback. And I do wonder whether there was any information that went out to either any of those advisory committees for those reserves to provide feedback as well. Was any information provided to them?
I'd have to look into that. I'm not aware of that.
Can we go to one more question and then we'll need to make a
Mr.
decision?
Chair, isn't this just a first gate, basically, which allows us to get past the statute of limitation? Doesn't say what the final wording's going to be, but if you don't do it, you might as well just give up, because nothing can be done. So we'd have to go through the whole process in a totally different way. So is it not so that this is just a first gate that just past the statute of limitation?
It is.
So, unless we've got a
I was
major
just
new
going to
question?
say, is it fair that D could be changed to allow further consultation after this?
Well, there will be further consultation.
Well, but
There will
just
be.
stating it so Mitch feels more comfortable. And Dion.
Can we go to...
Just updating that.
Thank you. Can we go to Benita? You've got your hand up, Benita.
Yeah, Kapai. Thank you. I think the conversation's getting to what I wanted to go to really, is just to have some protection and some guarantee that this is just buying the ticket to get on the bus at the time we decide we want to get on the bus, right? This isn't confirming anything. This isn't committing iwi to anything. This is just buying the ticket on to the bus. And in saying that, what are the ramifications if we don't make this deadline for this application? Like we've talked about having to start all over again, but what does that actually look like?
Any comment on that?
I guess I'm not sure in terms, without knowing the...
Mr Chair, perhaps I can comment. This is buying a ticket to get on the bus, as you saw, the option of getting on the bus. The bus driver may say he's full and was not prepared to give us, which is the minister, or she actually might say she is not prepared to sell us a ticket, therefore we have no option. So this is actually establishing whether there's an even merit, further consultation, whether the minister will even consider the issue at all in terms of whether she will let us proceed. It is an issue that was flagged over 12 months ago, 15 months ago with iwi chief executives. So there has been variable consultation processes over that time frame, well before Anne's arrival at council, and it is only about, as you express it, buying the right to carry on. The option of if you let this lapse, it's effectively a wasted process and additional cost in terms of having to go back and start again and taking longer to get there, and you'll still have to decide, you'll still then have to go to the bus driver and say, can I have the option to sit on your bus? So you will have to do this at some stage, unless you decide to wait, as has just been stated, until the new planning regime, which is looking like at earliest 2029, before anything like that will be allowed to happen, and there are some practical consequences of that for development in the interim.
And it's election year next year.
So what if we did change that date?
Okay. Thank you.
Can we just confirm that recommendation, if that could be updated? So it's just recommendation D, notes iwi concerns and recommendations to undertake further consultation. So just consultation and.
Further, okay. Consultation and drafting.
Happy with that, Chair, and happy to move the recommendations as they are stated there.
Okay, with the inclusion in recommendation D.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Of consultation. Thank you, Grant. Okay, so recommendations, page 210, the Regional Council receives a memorandum titled Request to Apply for Plan Stop Exemption to continue the coastal plan change process. B, approves the decision of council staff to submit an exemption application for the plan stop requirement under section 85 of the Resource Management Consenting and Other System Changes Amendment Act 2025. C, supports the continuation of the plan change process if an exemption is granted. D, notes iwi concerns and the recommendation to undertake further consultation and drafting of the preferred option. E, determines that this decision be recognised as not significant in terms of section 76 of the Local Government Act 2002, and F, determines that it has complied with the decision-making provisions of the Local Government Act 2002 to the extent necessary in relation to this decision and in accordance with section 79 of the Act, and determines that it does not require further information, further assessment of options, or further analysis of costs and benefits, or advantages and disadvantages prior to making a decision on this matter. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Craig and Grant. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
I just wanted to note one opposition for Ngāti Rūne, who asked us to vote against.
Okay, thank you. Carried. Now we come to, thank you very much. Obviously there's a lot to discuss on that one. Can we come to item number 9, Taranaki energy scenarios? Finbar, we're going to hand over to you to take us through that item. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. For those who don't know me, I'm Decemberr. I'm the strategy lead here at the Council. So myself and the small team that I work with do a range of odd jobs around the Council, but you'll most likely see me here when we're talking about potential submissions on central government proposals, resource management reform more broadly, and we have Teresa Gordon in our team who's our program manager. She's been focusing on freshwater at the moment, but you can appreciate that role is shifting towards broader resource management reform. And also we deal with climate change issues in our team. So Jane Harvey, our climate change coordinator, you might see here as well. And I also do the odd job like coordinating our engagement on the TTR at Fast Track application. I'll take the paper as read. I realise we're pushing up against time, so I'm not going to speak to any points in the paper because I'm sure it was a riveting read and breezed through it all. But I will just want to emphasise one thing, and that's just with regards to these scenarios. We want to be very clear, we're not expecting any of these actually come to pass. You know, the real future, looking out 30 years is kind of crazy. And the future will be a mix of these different things. But the idea is by kind of looking at these extremes across these different axes, it allows you to plan for what might be, so you can put policy interventions in place to try to realise those, and also understand what if things kind of go a bit belly up, what that might look like so you can guard against those. And the idea being that for our spatial plan, we've got to look out 30 years, so how can we use this work to inform policy decisions that help enable the kind of transition of Taranaki's energy industry while avoiding or trying to guard against some of those futures where the energy sector basically isn't a thing in Taranaki in 30 years' time. So then how do we plan for wider diversification and things like that? But I'll leave it there, very happy to take any questions.
Donna.
I was through the chair. I was just going to say, I've lost my train of thought. So this could lead up to central government this will lead up to central government thinking about future funding, because, you know, like that question I asked you this morning about us feeding into the national grid and what the cost of that would be.
The focus on this has been very much on what we can do in terms of the spatial plan and some of the policy levers we can pull around potentially identifying areas where you might want to encourage demand and generation, or how you enable the development of decentralised energy, so solar panels and things like that in the right places. The report has potential uses in some of those engagements with central government about investment priorities, but it's not the primary focus. But we have worked very closely with the likes of Venture Taranaki and the like, so they're planning to use some of this for the work that they do as well.
Thanks, Vinda.
It's not a question, it's just two things that would be good to see iwi and Papua involved in the future. And just around comms, the front image with the lighthouse, just in case you're not aware, that's kind of offensive for Māori because that is a symbol of the confiscation and the bringing of the road, shipping and telegraph. So just something to be aware of.
Right, yeah, won't be using that one again. It's really good to know, thank you. And yes, and we're, as we move into the next phases, where we're starting to, this is initially very broad, but we're going to probably start zeroing in on potential areas in more detail, and we're really going to emphasise the iwi and Hapu consultation. That's vital for that.
Very good. No further questions? Thanks very much, Vinda. Just a couple of recommendations there. That Taranaki Regional Council have received a memorandum titled Taranaki Energy Solutions, and is that solutions or scenarios? Scenarios, yeah, solutions here. And B notes the 4 different scenarios developed and the implications such would have for the future of Taranaki. Thank you very much. Would like to move that, John? Thank you. Second, Lee, we'll go to you. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And we come now to item 10, the last one on the agenda. Thank you, Finbar. Take us through the resource management reform update.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'll again take the paper as read. We've perhaps foolishly put down what we think is going to happen in writing in just under a week before the bills are released, so we'll probably immediately be proved wrong. But before you is a summary of what we've heard from government announcements with regards to the characteristics of the new regime, such as that focus on private property rights and that greater national direction. Then also the structure of what these new plans are going to look like, with your joint spatial plan done collaboratively across the 4 councils, and then underneath that an environment chapter that the regional council would write, and then land use chapters that each district council would write, sitting under one plan, I suppose. The paper also steps through some of the work we've done to date in terms of, this is going to be, as Steve mentioned earlier, a huge amount of work. So we're wanting to start some of that thinking earlier and get the ball rolling, and noting that you should all have, there's the work on submissions that we're going to be doing collaboratively across the 4 councils, because those timeframes will probably be highly compressed when we see the bills, and of course over Christmas, so yay. And just noting the point around developing a heads of agreement amongst the councils. We think in the absence of the legislation and really knowing what that's until that's passed, having some sort of agreement amongst the councils about how we're going to work together and the priorities just gives us that kind of confidence to start, getting cracking basically, even in this period of uncertainty. I'll leave it there. Happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you.
But is the deadline for submissions also going to be 20 February? Do you know, or do you think? And was that the deadline for the race cap? Because I saw they said end of February, they didn't actually say 20.
Through you, Chair, I think I saw 20 February somewhere. That would, if that would be nice, because it means we at least get a policy and planning committee before the submission is actually lodged. Yeah, that's been kind of mid-Feb has been what we've been planning for, but hard to know until we see.
That'll be the day for the lot, probably.
Quite possibly.
Mr. Chair, I think it's important to know there are at least 4 major pieces of government consultation out between now and 20th of February. So we're not only going to be very busy, you're going to be very busy at your first policy committee at the end of January, responding to those 4 major pieces of consultation affecting local government. So think of us while you're eating your Christmas lunch.
That's right.
Beavering away, working out what to do in a submission for you to compile the 2nd of February, I think it is.
We'll give you an hour
I think you
off
should have Christmas off. Grant.
Through you, Chair. Just one question, the heads of agreement, you're looking at enabling that through the mayoral forum, or are you, is that how you're going to start doing that?
We're still working that through, and we want to have a discussion with the mayoral forum about that. We were thinking that potentially a small working group appointed of kind of maybe 2 from each council, being kind of a working group to start shaping some of that up, and the expectations that they, the TRC reps will be engaging with their wider councillors to kind of shape that input, just so we've got a workable group to kind of draft something, and then we'll bring that back out for further feedback and refinement. Loosely what we're thinking about, yes, but still working it through.
Through you, Chair, I think that's a really good idea, because you also got to be developing having wraparound around all councillors, of all the councils, so they've got all feedback in it. So this is something actually really quite huge, eh?
Yes,
yeah, and good luck through Christmas period, mate.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Well, let's come to the recommendations, page 3, 6, 4 and 5. That the Taranaki Regional Council receives a memorandum titled Resource Reform Update and notes we are entering a period of significant change and uncertainty for the resource management system and everyone who engages with it. C, notes the proposal to develop a heads of agreement amongst the 4 councils to guide how we work together in the new system. D, notes the importance of developing a strong working partnership with EB on resource management reform. And E, notes that officers from the 4 councils are working collaboratively on developing submissions on the new bills, and that engagement with councillors to shape the submissions will likely occur later in December and definitely in January as well. So can I have a move and second, I think? Craig, and thank you, Neil Walker. All those in favour?
Aye.
You say aye. Well, kia ora, that comes to the end of our agenda. Thank you very much. Let us close with our karakia. It's on your card in front of you. And then, Mitch, can I ask you to do a karakia kai for lunch as well? So let's say this together. Kia uru mai, kia ora, kia hakaha, e mai, ki runga, ki raro, ki roto, ki waho, riri, riri ho, mai mari e.
Tātou kai, nā mai ngaua, te wā o te ngaki no te waitau, te wai Māori, nā tāne, nā rungu, nā tangarua, nā maru, ko rangi nui e tui o nei, ko papatua, ko e takoto ake nei, Tō turu ki te waka maua ki a tīma. Uie.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Glad Mitch. Kia ora tātou.
Thanks, Benita.
Interesting stuff,